Living
Autopsy on a killer. Another rocket to the space station lost. I'm Michael Toscano.
The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol actually shot him with a semi-automatic weapon 3 times in the head.
Correspondent Jean Cazares on the Richard Matt autopsy just released by New York State Police. She says his body has blisters and abrasions consistent with being in the woods for 3 weeks. Rain today hampering the search for Matt's running mate, convicted killer David Sweat. NASA trying to figure out what caused the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket to blow up shortly after launch from Cape Canaveral this morning, loaded with supplies for the International Space Station. SpaceX President Glenn Shotwell.
We saw some pressurization indications in the second stage, which we'll be tracking down and following up on there.
NASA says the astronauts on the space station have 4 months of supplies on board. The Athens Stock Exchange will not open for Monday trading, and banks in Greece will stay closed after creditors refuse to extend the country's bailout. This may hurt world financial markets when trading begins Monday. I'm Michael Toscano. America's security apparatus gearing up for possible ISIS attacks on U.S. soil over the 4th of July holiday. Congressman Peter King of the House Homeland Security Committee telling ABC's This Week ISIS must be taken seriously.
ISIS is incomparable as far as terrorist organizations, as far as being able to reach. They can reach the disaffected, they can reach the deranged, they can also reach the ideologically committed.
President Obama says the Supreme Court ratification of the Affordable Care Act means Republicans need to stop trying to kill it. House Budget Committee Chairman Republican Paul Ryan telling CBS's Face the Nation he doesn't think so.
I think this law is going to collapse under its own weight. I'm as motivated as ever before to repeal and replace this law, and that's what we're working on.
Chris Squire, the bass-playing legend who co-founded British rock band Yes, died this weekend in Phoenix.
I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way.
Bandmate Jeffrey Downs tweeted he's utterly devastated. Squire was dealing with leukemia. I'm Michael Toscano.
Johnny wants to be a performer, and everybody knows school costs money. Johnny wants to know what he has to do to become a performer. Plus, he needs experience before he decides to spend the money for school. Johnny's confused. He has no one to talk to about his choices. He then hears an ad on the radio about Media8tor Arts Academy, where he can perform, network, train, and find a place to prepare for school. Johnny has found a place to expand his talents to make his decision and also increase his resume. Now, let's explain how Johnny got signed up. He went online to Media8inc.com and clicked on register. They called him back, asked him what his vision was, then found a place for him to perform. Whether it's theater, music, or movies, as long as Johnny is willing, Media8inc.com is able. And that's the story of how Johnny became a performer through Media8 Arts Academy.
Greek Prime Minister says banks in his country will remain closed for a time and restrictions will be placed on bank withdrawals. This after the European Central Bank declined today to increase emergency credit to Greek banks. Greeks have been lining up at ATMs to withdraw cash after the bailout negotiations faltered. The Athens stock market will not be open for Monday trading, and all this may adversely affect world financial markets tomorrow. And again, repeating our top story of the hour, escaped murderer David Sweat said to be in custody, perhaps shot, multiple sources saying. I'm Michael Toscano.
Have you ever thought about publishing a book, but just didn't know how to do it? Well, at Media8, we try to make publishing simple. You ask questions, we give you answers. You want a book? We find the right option for you to publish. When you need advice about getting your methods out to the world, Media8 is the place to call. Register today at Media8inc.com, where we make ideas seem simple.
This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo. All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
All doctors to the ER. All nurses to the nurses station. Code blue 305. 10-4 engine, highway 3 Shots fired, shots fired. Officer down. I repeat, officer down. 911, what's your emergency?
continue tonight in Maryville.
Apartments, you can see this evacuation notice on one door.
Rolling, motion, roll on sound, and action.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ohioans, Pennsylvanians, Americans, welcome to The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West. We have a fantastic show for you today. I have my friend Debórah Benton on the line. Debórah, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, Brian.
Hello, excellent show. Now, with the show today is about public relations and the importance of women as entrepreneurs in not only America, but the world. Once upon a time, women were not even allowed a voice. Now they're able to dictate and pretty much negotiate a lot of things, and they use public relations in a vital way. So, Debórah, tell me, before we begin the meat of the topic, tell me how you got into public relations.
Well, I went to Bowling Green State University, and I majored in communications. And the interesting thing about communications is that it's such a vast field. And so while my particular area of interest or special interest was in radio, television, and film, you're talking about just a huge gamut, even when you say those three entities. And so the area of public relations was something that really kind of evolved very naturally and organically because it was so necessary. You know, if you, for example, if you produce a TV program, well, unless you know something about public relations and marketing, or if you don't have a team to handle that entity for you, you've got to know something about how to get your product out there in front of people. And it's not just about taking it and saying, okay, well, I'm going to just put it on TV and everybody's going to watch it. No, you've got to know how to target it, how to target your content as well as your advertising and marketing so that the people who the program would mean something to know how to know when to tune in and watch. So it was something that kind of happened over time. I found that I had a sort of natural propensity to just be able to relate with people and kind of understand where they were coming from. And if I had a particular point of view or a product or a personality or a client that I needed to sell, I would kind of do some investigating, so to speak, to get a good feel of what the audience or the target market was interested in and come up with a good mix or a good match to meet their needs as well as whomever I was representing. So it was something that kind of it started coming naturally, and then as I realized it was something that I liked, and it was also very necessary, I started studying it as well.
The reason why I asked, just to point the reference for today's show, is the individual rights and the civic responsibilities of women and women's rights. This is the reference for today's show. Is written by Jacqueline Ching and Juliet Ching. Now, the reason why I asked is because I don't think people understand that public relations has been around since the founding of the women's movement. Since the women they used it in a sense that they didn't even know that the field was there. So that's why I asked you, how did you get into it? Because now when I did my research into the topic, these women in the beginning, when they were just starting to maintain a voice in America and in the world, they used networks of other women to get what they want accomplished. I mean, you had some great female spectators. You had Sir Jonah Truth. I mean, you had get my notes over here. You had Sarah Bowley, you had Susan Anthony, and there was just a lot of women at the beginning of the foundation that used public relations. So now tell us, who did you, when you knew that was your calling, I seen in your resume you had TV shows, you've been doing this for a while. So who influenced you the most to kind of take it on as a career?
I love that question, and let me tell you. First of all, you are absolutely right about women coming to the fore and really bringing PR to the fore. But I'll tell you, I'll go back even further, and I'll tell you who my role model was in public relations.
Yeah.
How many of our listeners remember the story of Jesus and the woman at the well?
Oh, I remember the Samaritan woman.
The greatest, most significant, most pronounced example of a phenomenal public relations campaign.
Yeah.
Because he goes to the well, he comes there, he reads her. And when I say reads her, I don't mean like, fortune telling, but I mean, he basically reads her pedigree. He sees into her. And from that, she leaves, and she goes, and she influences everybody that she knew. And they didn't know anything about her, but she said, come see a man. And whatever it was about her persona, about her excitement, her enthusiasm, she was able to influence her circle of relations for them to come see a man. So I always take my illustration or my impetus from that story. To me, that was the greatest example of a hard-hitting public relations campaign, very effective.
Yeah.
Right on the head. So yeah, you're right about those women, but and there is a woman even before those.
You said that started it all. So why do you think public relations, I mean, just getting to know not only your neighbor but the community when you get involved, and why do you think it's so important and pivotal in this new society?
Well, I think it's really critical for a number of reasons. But let me start with this, Brian. A lot of people are gifted in regards to public relations, and of course you've heard of spin doctors.
Yeah.
And for those who may not know, a spin doctor, I could be a spin doctor. I can take a concept or I can take a product and put just the right spin on it to encourage or influence people into purchasing or participating. And the reason that we talk about spin doctors is because normally that's a negative connotation. You're putting a spin on something that may not be the accurate spin or may not be in the best interest of people, but you're manipulating them in essence.
Yeah.
Well, you can be talented and gifted and perceptive and very skilled in public relations and use your influence for good. And that's really what I try to do. And because of that, I'm really very guarded about who I represent and how I will represent them.
Yeah.
So we need public relations because, for example, there's a doctor that I do work for. In fact, there's a couple doctors I do work for. One is Dr. Collins, who used to live in this area. Another one is Dr. Rodney Hill. Dr. Collins is a general practitioner. He has a specialty as it relates to children. Dr. Rodney Hill is an OBGYN.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Collins has such a vital knowledge as it relates to hypertension and diseases that have the worst impact, in particular, on African Americans.
Yeah.
And I'll listen to concepts that he shares with me, and I'll understand a way to translate it so that the people who really need to pay attention and who need to follow certain guidelines will have a desire to do so, as opposed to just okay, if you take too much salt, if you don't exercise, if you do this and that and the other, you're going to develop high blood pressure and you're going to be on meds, or
so you make it legible for them.
Yeah, I make it. I'm sorry. You said make it what?
Well, you make it clear. You try to put it in a clear vision to where they understand it.
And actually, it's not so much that, because the doctor, he needs no help explaining it. But what I do try to do that may be a little different is I'll try to find out where your interests are, why you respond the way that you do, why possibly you don't pay attention to some of the things that you need to. I'll try to get in your head, get in your environment, get in your world, and get an understanding of those things, and then take what I've learned and create a platform that's palatable for you. So I guess that would be the better word. I think it would be find a way to make it palatable so that you'll receive it. The same thing with Dr. Hill. He's an amazing OBGYN, but not everyone knows who he is. And so there may be other doctors who are in the area who may be more prominent, more popular, so to speak. But then, as I worked with Dr. Hill, I found out a lot of amazing things about him that he does differently than any of the other OBGYNs, but he does it in the best interest of the patient. And so, again, finding out, what it is you're looking for when you're looking for a gynecologist or somebody to deliver your baby.
Yeah.
And just kind of meeting those worlds up, finding out what it is you like, what it is you need, and making information more palatable to you.
Well, one thing I learned about most people who are dealing with public relations is that some specialists, like if you're in the business and you're actually a professional public relations counselor or public relations person, that some of them, I remember when I first got started in the business of authorship, writing books and writing, I would reach out and try to find a public relations person to help me out. And some of them, their prices are off the charts. Like you'll talk about $15,000 just for consultations. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of cater to the public. I mean, what is your specialty?
Well, actually, my specialty, I would say, is personalities. I if you know anything about my former TV show, I'm very much into people. I'm very much into what makes them tick, and then finding those other platforms to take what it is that they offer and get it to the people that need it. And let me say this too, Brian. When I actually had started a PR firm in this area some years ago, and I didn't continue with it primarily for one reason. The very thing that you just said in terms of the rates.
Yeah.
But here is the difference between a public relations company and a publicist. Like, for example, you'll turn on the news or Entertainment Tonight or any of those shows, and you'll often hear the spokesperson for a particular celebrity.
Yeah.
And their spokesperson will say something, and you'll hear these phenomenal, what may seem to be outrageous figures in terms of what a publicist makes. Somebody who represents a celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, again, let me explain the difference. The difference between a public relations company and a publicist is this. A public relations company, they may open their doors from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
8 to 4, whatever. They work a set schedule. You give them a project. They work the project. They map out a plan. They execute the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty well contained. And that's a very good thing, and you can make a good living from that.
Yeah.
But being a publicist is literally a 24/7 job. And I'll give you an illustration. I had some clients when I was serving as a publicist.
Yeah.
I had one client that was living in Germany.
Oh, my man.
I had a client that was I had about 4 or 5 clients that were living in L.A. I had one that was living in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Texas, this area, they were 2 hours behind us. Germany was 6 hours ahead of us. California was 3 hours behind us.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a regular sleep schedule for me.
Wow. So she said that's a pretty tough job being a public relations person, huh?
Well, and the thing about it is not so much that it's a tough job, but even if, let's say, for example, even if I'm just representing one client locally,
yeah.
Here's the thing. When it comes to being a publicist, you have to be available for whatever the need of the client is, and that doesn't necessarily fall into the neat package of 8 to 5. If something comes up that could have a negative impact on your client,
yeah.
Let's say they happen to be on a trip in L.A. and they're 3 hours behind, or they may be someplace else in the world. Well, it doesn't matter when it is. You have to address it, and you have to get ahead of it, and you've got to do everything you need to do for it. And then the other part of that is you're reaching out to the media. So you don't pick and choose when the media gets to respond to you. If I send out a press release and somebody in China responds to me regarding that press release, and let's say they want to do an interview just like what you're doing, I have to avail myself, and it doesn't matter what time it is. You know, you respond based on the need and based on the demand. So in that regard, you really become very tied to someone else's schedule.
Yeah.
There are good and bad habits. If you've got a client that you've got to constantly do damage control for, there's so many things involved with it. Even in terms of, I've had clients who, before they step out the door, I need to find out what they're wearing and why they're wearing it and where they're going and what they're going to talk about. And if I'm not comfortable with their talking points, I've got to stop whatever I'm doing and go back and develop other talking points for them and coach them. So when they give you their rates, if they are worth their salt, they have those rates for a reason, and it's a lot of it because they'll get you where you're trying to go.
Now you talk about the difficulties of it. Now you talk about press releases, and what advice would you give to the person out there who's trying to get into the field of not just public relations, but trying to get in the door? I mean, what advice would you give to them?
Okay, when you say get in the door, which door are we talking about?
I mean, okay. Everybody, most people need somebody to do public relations because they can't. Some people don't have good communication skills when it comes to the media and things like that. So, I mean, what advice would you give them to look for in a not just a good public relations person, but even if they wanted to take it on themselves?
There's actually a couple things. One, there is, unlike when I first started, with the internet was not so pervasive. But first of all, there's a lot of good information out there, a lot of quality information. There are courses online, free courses even, that you can take online, like just quick down and dirty things that you can learn in terms of public relations. And also, you can often just pick up the phone and call somebody, go through the directory, whether it's a printed or online directory, find somebody. You may not get that person on the first try, but if you continue to try, I can almost guarantee you somebody will be willing to give you some pointers. Because the other thing that we understand in this business is, as it relates to advertising, marketing, public relations, media, distribution, all of that, if you're just starting out and you don't have the financial resources, if nobody ever gives you a hand, you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, you'll spend a few minutes just giving somebody some helpful information to help them along their way. And if if they're a reasonable person, when they get moving and are generating some revenue, hopefully they'll remember you and they'll come back and it'll be a win-win situation. But you're right. Everybody, if you've got anything that you're trying to get out into the public, you do need public relations on some level. It may not always be on a massive level, but you do need it on some level. And so my first suggestion, if you don't have the financial resources, would be to just reach out and ask for help. And then the other thing I would also say, even if you do have the financial resources, don't just automatically cut somebody a check to do PR.
Yeah.
You need to find someone who is versed in your area. And I'll give you a good example. My field is not real estate. So if you come to me to help you with real estate, and I have done I've had one or two clients who are in real estate, but I have to tell you, I've got some level or some degree of a learning curve because real estate is not my area of expertise or my forte, or that's just not the area that I work in all the time. So you want somebody who is versed in whatever the field is that you're in. I would not be the first or the best immediate publicist for, say, an athlete, because, anybody who knows me knows I don't know a whole lot about sports.
Yeah.
You would want a publicist who really understands that field.
Absolutely.
I'm versed in entertainment. I'm versed in the area of celebrity. I'm also pretty versed in as it relates to a lot of different businesses. So when it comes to those areas, I can get up and running pretty quickly. But again, before you just cut somebody a check, you want to check their track record, and not just check their track record, but check their heart in terms of the kind of commitment. I know a woman right now who has been on national shows all over the country. She's even been on Oprah. And she needed a publicist, or she needed a public relations company, and she dropped several tens of thousands of dollars with a company that was very well established, but she actually got nothing in terms of a return on her investment. Why? Because they were very expensive, but she didn't have the kind of profile that made their work easy. So what that meant was they were going to have to work really hard to get her into the venues and circles and platforms that she wanted to get onto. So if it's a big company, that works with a lot of top name celebrities, and you don't have that kind of clout, I would not suggest you go to a company like that. Instead, you want to find somebody that's hungry, that's willing to really do a lot of the grunt work for you, and that's going to give you a good return on your investment. So, again, everybody needs public relations, but you need to do your homework and make sure that before you cut anybody a check, that it's going to be something that's going to benefit you well.
Quick tagline, everybody. You're listening to The Media with Brian West and Alicia Sparks. I am Sparks today. I am here. So if you want to donate to the program, you can always donate at method8inc.com. That is method8inc.com. If you want to donate to The Mediator. We cater to the arts. I'm talking to Debórah Benton about the importance of public relations and women entrepreneurs in this new environment that we live in today. Now we're getting into the meat of the topic here, Debórah. We've talked about public relations, and now let's talk about the women's role now. Women have made a big impact on society. They've not only changed the infrastructure a lot, but they've changed the curriculum of how things are taught, not just taught, but presented nowadays. So, and when you see that, what were some of the first challenges you faced as a female coming into the business world?
Well, one of the first challenges that I faced, and often, and I'll be candid, it still continues to be a challenge from time to time, and that is the economic side. And I've talked to countless women, and many of us have that same challenge, and that is knowing how to price ourselves and not feeling a little bit ashamed about the price that we should command. As it relates to women in public relations, I find that you have more women in public relations for a number of reasons. Women tend to handle a lot of different tasks very well, as opposed to, and I don't want to shortchange men, I'll just say, often you'll find, just like in a household, the man, he may or may not, because, again, it doesn't apply to all men, but the man may have specific tasks that he does, whereas anything that he doesn't do, which could be a whole gamut of things, the woman kind of picks up the rear on so many other things. And those kinds of skills actually translate well in the area of public relations because, again, you're dealing with people, and it's never a nice, neat, controlled package. You step into an arena, you assess what has to be done, and there's so many things that you'll have to be able to do, and do quickly, and do on a multitask level, and just kind of keep it moving. You have everything from writing, and often it requires a certain level of sensitivity to be able to pick out those nuggets and define those stories, and be able to kind of negotiate those things. Figure out what's important, what isn't. So I think for those reasons, you often find more women in public relations than you do men.
Oh, okay. Now, everybody's, the country's facing so much turmoil right now. When you talk about just women in general and the direction that we're taking. I mean, you might have the first female who hasn't a female candidate as president for a long time. So what role do you think women play now in America? Do you still think they play the same role as they did in the beginning?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, the roles have definitely expanded, which is a good thing. I tend to think more on a holistic basis. So I'm excited to see women's roles expanding, but I don't think that needs to be something where a man's role becomes diminished. I think what it really should be, and what it should have always been, is that people are recognized, responded to, and rewarded based on their skills.
Yeah, I agree. Most men think that they're losing their place in the world. I think some men are just they don't even agree with women being. Some men still believe in that old era of sense. I get blamed for that sometimes. I don't know why, but some people say I'm kind of old fashioned in a sense. But but they're trying to find like a big time solution to a lot of relationship problems in America. And it's like the culture. It's like such a culture shock that people can't stay together in relationships like that. So when you see that, especially you being so I mean, you've been an influence in your community for a long time. So I mean, what advice do you give the new age women who can't seem to, I mean, they're doing a lot of things, and what's funny about that, Debórah, is actually in the movement, when the women's rights movements first started, it was pretty much the same way. Some women found themselves single. Some women found themselves having to kill their children and even kill themselves. So now we face a pivotal point in history to where women are still trying to fight, not only just for that place, but for that sense of importance in everybody's life.
Well, I think, Brian, and you bring up some really important points, but I think one of the things that happens is people often, in looking at the big picture, they lose a few things. They lose their concept of self, and they lose sight of what's important. I'll give you an example. Okay, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
I'm an African-American woman. I'm a Christian woman. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm an entrepreneur. A number of things. So let's say I'm applying, or I'm trying to get a contract, and maybe my competitor is a man who is all of the opposite things that I am. Okay, I'm black. He's white. And you can just run any list of opposites that you want. Well, if I go in with the mindset of looking at what the perspective of the job is, looking at my own skill set, my own experience, what I can bring to the table, including, being competitive in terms of pricing, all of those things. If I look at those things and I bid based on a place of integrity, then no matter what the outcome is, I need to believe that I did what was right. And a couple things. If I don't get the job, if let's say you're the person who's awarding the contract. If you deny me the contract and in favor of the white male counterpart, hopefully you did that based on what your need was, and that your need was one of reasonable, sound, integrity, fairness, all of that. So here's the thing: if you made a decision based in favor of my competitor for all the right reasons, then everybody wins, because if you brought him in for the right reasons, then that means that he really was the better person for the job at that time.
Now that's interesting that you answer it like that, because most, if you look at the foundational structure of just not just women's rights, but it was freedom, the abolitionist movement, and thing like that, where people had to pretty much get themselves out of a sense of inferior. I think like when they feel like below the majority. So basically what you're saying is, like, if the employer faces it from a professional standpoint to where he's saying, okay, you have the skills, but I'm going to take this person because he's either this complexion or he's a man, then that leaves you lifeless. So, I mean, there's a lot of that going on. I think it is the amazing thing about it is it still goes on to where women still feel, I mean, even if you talk about right now, they've got the women in the Marines where they're trying to become Marines, and they're trying to get equal pay as men. Now, do you agree in that fashion? In that sense, Debórah?
Okay, two things I want to address. One, in reference to the fairness in terms of hiring a person on their skill set, let me also inject, and this could be a topic for another conversation, but I also am a very firm believer in affirmative action. However, affirmative action has been bastardized, and I'll give you a quick example there. I did some work for a company or a commission here in the area some years ago, and one of the things was putting together their minority business directory.
Yeah.
So I'm compiling all of these hundreds of businesses that were supposed to be minorities. And, my job was to compile the directory. I really wasn't supposed to get involved in the minutia of who the contractors were in this directory. But I really couldn't help it. I called the executive director for this commission, and I said, I have to ask you, I'm looking at all of these names, and I know that it was primarily construction companies.
Yeah.
And I knew that these names were white, female, construction or white female names for these construction companies. I'm talking hundreds of them.
Mm.
And the commissioner explained to the executive director of this commission, explained to me, yes, I know that, but there's nothing we can do about it. I said, what do you mean? He said, what has happened is the construction company owners, who predominantly were white men, in order to be able to get certain government contracts that were supposed to be set aside for minorities under the Set Aside Act and under affirmative action, they're using their wives.
Oh, man.
So here again, you can have black, male or female, contractors bidding on jobs, but because people in decision-making positions are not being fair, are not being honest.
Yeah.
So, it turns around, and the people who are supposed to benefit from affirmative action are not.
That's so amazing that you mentioned that, Ms. Benton. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but it's amazing because the reason why I had to interject is because most of the historical documents, you had Roosevelt's wife got involved, John Adams' wife had got involved, and they pretty much begged. They had to beg these men who were in powerful positions. They had to beg them to give them a shot at equal rights, not just equal rights, but a place. So you're pretty much saying that that's still going on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what happens is, it's unfortunate that every time a law is passed that is supposed to help people who have been oppressed so that they can finally get to a level playing field, the problem with that is that now the people who are responsible for enforcing that law and delegating responsibility, doling out contracts, all of those things are the same people who created the problem in the first place.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, I'm a fox and you're a fox, and the law has come down and says, okay, I got to make sure that the chickens in the hen house are fed. So I hand the contract or the responsibility of that off to my fox brother.
Yeah. And
that really has been what has been happening with affirmative action. You asked another question about equal pay. Absolutely. I mean, it's just common sense. A lot of things that we just use common sense and then we wouldn't have to engage the courts. It's just common sense. Close your eyes. Hand two people a broom. Put one on the left side of the street and the other on the right side of the street. Tell them to sweep the street. Both of them they've got the same job, they should get the same pay. But for some kooky reason, I look at you and go, wait a minute. Because you've got attractive legs that look good under a skirt, I'm going to give you 50% less of what he's getting.
Amazing.
I mean, really, when you think about it, there's just that's like, how do you even have a discussion about, I'm going to wash the dish, you're going to wash the dish. We're washing the same dish, we're using the same kind of water, same scrubbing technique, but because, I don't know, maybe because your arm is hairier, I'm going to pay you more? I don't know. I mean, it's just, some things just don't make sense.
Well, in a sense, I thought it was important to address this topic, to bring it up before Independence Day, because of the fact that Americans' independence, most men don't, most people in new society don't understand where all these women's rights and these things come from. So when you look at, even when you go overseas and the women are being brutalized, and some people don't understand why America is so important and pivotal at this particular point in time, where women are over there getting, just brutalized. I mean, some of them are getting, I don't even want to get into it because it's very is very degrading. You got 11-year-olds being forced into marriage. So women in this new world right now, it took a friend of mine to actually sit and talk to me, because there was a female that she was coming to work, do some help, and she had a child. And this woman talked to me. She said, Brian, you have to understand, okay, this woman is single. She needs to feed her child. She says she's not a gold digger. She's not what you hear the media or anybody portraying her to be. She just needs to feed her child. And you have something that she needs, you know. So elaborate on that a little bit. When somebody, an employer or people who have the money, and these women can't, you know, they don't have their followers around us. So talk a little bit about that a little bit, Debórah.
Okay, as it relates to the workplace. Okay, let's just be very real, very candid, very non-political, because, you know, political correct or incorrect is really not the issue. Sometimes that just really gets into foolishness, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Let's just be real. First of all, okay, men and women in the United States and all over the world need to work to generate income to provide for themselves and their families. That's a given.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now the other thing that for some crazy reason we've really gone off the rail in terms of respecting the difference between men and women. Mm-hmm. I am not one of those women who says we're the same. No, we are not the same, which is why I asked my husband to carry the sweeper up and down the steps. We're not the same.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that, you know, when it comes to needing to change the tire on a car, you know, or any kind of thing that really, you know, if I look at it and I say, no, that's a little too strenuous for me, I'm thankful that my husband, the men in my family, the men in my life, they understand that. They don't have a problem with it. I have my first time for them to look at me and go, you're just like I am, go do it. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay, so understanding that we are different physiologically, and not just physiologically, we are different on so many fronts. Really, our similarities are very obvious. We all come with 2 feet, 2 hands, 10 fingers and toes.
Yeah.
1 nose, you know, those kinds of things. So anyway, okay, so getting back to the workplace. Let's deal with truth. Starting off with every man that is a CEO, a manager, a supervisor, an employee, whatever his rank is in the workplace, I promise you, he was delivered by a woman.
Yeah. You say he came out of somewhere.
He was delivered by a woman.
Absolutely.
And she needed some time off to take care of him, to nurture him, as well as allow her own body to heal back up.
Amazing.
But take care of him so that he could be the man that he is as manager, CEO, supervisor, employee, whatever.
My mother, yeah, I can.
Okay.
Amen.
So the first thing is if every man would just stop for a minute and realize he got here through a woman.
I agree.
Then, so when you understand that, and when you can finally respect that, and know that, you know, he was not carried in the womb of a man.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, and the reason I'm saying it this way is because you've got to finally get to where you respect the differences.
Yeah.
So now, having said that, we know that there is a distinct difference between a woman and a man.
Yeah.
If I'm that man and I have female employees and male employees, well, I don't need the Family Leave Act or Maternity Leave Act to tell me that a woman may need a different schedule than a man.
Absolutely.
So then the question becomes, I have a business to run, responsibilities. It could be to shareholders, to customers, clients, as well as the other employees on the job, okay? So we understand that. So 2 things we're looking at. There are differences, and I have specific needs that must be met.
Yeah.
In order to remain profitable and remain in business, okay? So now, once we understand those things, then I can say that I can look at the guy and go, okay, your schedule, as a man is pretty basic because you'll never be pregnant. You may need to have some particular family needs that you may need some concessions for. But by and large, a man's schedule can be pretty well set.
Yeah.
So for the female employees, I also understand that they bring some things to the table that I will never get from a man.
Absolutely.
Things that I value, and if I want my company to move forward, I better respect those differences. Things that women understand about women, they can get me indoors that men cannot. They can pick up on things. They can do things. Each of the sexes has their own proclivities for things that they can do that maybe somebody else can't.
Well, it was common for the woman when the man would go off to war, she would take over her husband's business. So there is what you're saying. There's some significance. There's some value still for the female, and it sounds like what you're saying is some men are not acknowledging that in a sense.
Okay, but this is the point I want to get to. If we would just use common sense and say, okay, what is the goal? If the goal is to sell 20 rivets, the man can do it on a regular schedule. Maybe this particular time in the woman's life she can't. But the question then is she a good salesperson? And if she is, then I would rather sit down at the table with her and say, okay, what can we do so that we both win? You need time with your family. I need these rivets sold.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, she's going to be creative and resourceful, and she's going to give me back a plan that works for everybody.
Yeah.
As long as it's working for everybody and I'm getting what I need in order for my business to continue to flourish, we're all good. Now, of course, there are going to be some cases and some businesses and occupations where, for you not to be in a certain seat at a certain time may not work. And you deal with those things as you need to.
Yeah.
But by and large, if you keep in front of you what the goal is, like, for example, and I'm going to be really facetious here. if the tire needs to be changed and a man can come in and change the tire, then let him come and do it. Well, maybe I want the job too.
Yeah.
But if the tire needs to be changed and I can't change the tire, maybe I've got a great circle of influence where I can get somebody to come in and change it and even save you some money. I mean, what you do is you take some time and some energy to allow people's brains to work.
Yeah.
People can be very resourceful if it's something that they really want, if it's important to them. But we kind of shut down dialogue and we create a lot of animosity and hostility when I look at you, Brian, and I decide you're a black man, so you don't qualify for this. You're a woman, so you don't. You just need somebody to take care of you, honey. All those kinds of things. Whereas if we just look at it in terms of common sense, just common sense, you'd be amazed at how far we could get.
So you're basically saying everybody's making a big deal, and it really just involves just a few simple solutions. Pretty much like if there's a union job and if nobody wants to do the job, then the manager just says, well, I do it, and why should he get in trouble? So you're basically saying that there's just lack of communication. People are putting things on paper, but there's no way that we could possibly do things by paper all the time.
You can't. You've got to employ humans. You've got to make human connections, and everything is not possible on paper. And then the other thing is, if I'm coming from a place of dishonesty, and you're coming from a place of lack of integrity, there's not enough lawyers on the planet to keep us straight between us, because we will always figure out a way to circumvent the spirit of the law for the letter.
Excellent. Everybody, quick tagline, everybody. You're listening to The Media with Brian West, Alicia Sparks. I am Sparks today. I'm talking to Debórah Benton. We are talking about the importance of women in not only public relations, but in the entrepreneurship world, the business world. We talk a little bit about civil rights. We talk women's rights in the early centuries. If you want to donate to the program, you can always donate at method8inc.com. Again, that's method, the number 8inc.com, where we pretty much cater to the arts and give people a voice in society. So we've talked about our little topic topic today. I want to thank you for taking on the topic, first of all, and you've shined some light on some things that still need to be addressed. I think not just in America, but in the world, is the role that females play, the importance. Now, tell us a little bit about your personal life. What do you got? I know you've got a family and things like that. What do you got going on in the future?
Well, as you know, my daughter, Lindsay Renee, I'm very involved with her in the Lindsay Renee Dance Theater, and that could be a 24/7 venture if I let it. But speaking of women, my husband and I brought our daughter up to be innovative and to be strong and confident. And so we're seeing the benefits of that now, where she started a dance company, and you're familiar with some of the productions that she's put on. We've appreciated your participation as well. And I'll tell you, Brian, I was sharing with my husband earlier today, I'm just really enjoying looking at some of the fruit of our labor. I mean, I tell parents this all the time. You can either pay now or you can pay later.
Absolutely.
When you have a child, they demand all of your attention. I mean, and that's what they demand, and to some extent, that's what they should get on some way or another. And you have a lot of parents who allow the television to occupy their children, everything but them.
Yeah.
When Lindsay was small, she didn't watch it. She didn't watch anything I didn't watch with her. If there was some adult content that I wanted to see, I didn't watch it, because as long as she was awake and in hearing range, we just kept the atmosphere healthy. And it wasn't that we were trying to make her world pristine. That wasn't realistic. But when children are supposed to have a period of innocence and just being kids, you rob them when you don't do that.
Absolutely.
And when you find other things to occupy your kids because you don't feel like it and you got to get your groove on and all of that, you're going to pay later. Right now, it's your time and attention. But if you don't do the things that are necessary and the things that you should do while they're young, you're going to pay for it. You'll be paying therapists. You'll be paying to get them out of jail. You'll be paying to get them drugs. You'll be paying for unwanted pregnancies and being grandma before you should, and all those kinds of things. So, like I said, I tell parents all the time, you can pay now or pay later. So now, my daughter's an adult, a young adult, and we've watched her go through college and go on to a professional dance company, and now she's come back into the area, and she's sewing into the lives of other young people. And the other interesting thing about it is, as a mother, and to me, that's just one of my that's probably my most sacred, most endeared occupation, mother and wife.
Yeah.
Now watching her sew back into other children, the tragedy is when you have children and they don't have the support system of their parents.
Oh, okay.
That's a hard thing to watch. You do all you can. You wrap your arms around as many kids as you can, but you also realize people are having kids and not being responsible for the kids that they've had. And again, that could be a whole other subject. That I'm just passionate about that.
Well, you seem very involved with not only your daughter's life, but you're there for her. I watched you when she did have the show. I've watched. I think you're probably a good example, and she seems very well rounded. She seems very sure of what she wants out of life, and I'm sure that's because that you've taken the time to, just bring her up as a womanly figure. Now, you seem to inflict she seems to have a lot of heritage in her. Did that come from your background? Like the African?
A lot of that came from, truthfully, I'm one of those people who the things that maybe I missed when I was growing up, rather than commiserate over what I didn't get and what I didn't experience and whatever my lack may have been, the fact that I'm aware of it, I'm able to say, okay, these are things that I can make sure that my daughter does have. Now, I'm not one of those people who believes in indulging, because I think you can give somebody too much and then they appreciate nothing. So, again, I believe in employing just common sense. You know, I've always said you can only wear one pair of shoes at a time. Of course, you need more than one pair of shoes. But just in terms of excess, you know, we never practiced that. Not in addition to the fact that, you know, we didn't have the money we weren't ballers, so to speak.
Yeah.
But even if we were, I believed in doing things, you know, if we had excess, then that was time to invite somebody else in and share.
Absolutely.
And those are the kinds of things that Lindsay always saw. It was never about just how much we can heap on ourselves, because, again, you can only wear one outfit at a time. You can drive one car at a time. You know, you can sleep in one room at a time. So when you see other people who are without, you don't look down your nose. You never separate yourself and say, you know, I'm better than them, because this is the other thing that I always taught my daughter. And you've seen Lindsay. Anybody that knows her knows she's a gorgeous woman.
Yeah.
She's been beautiful from day one. And what we always taught her was those things that are your assets and your beauty, your intelligence, all of those things, you didn't give them to yourself. So you can't pat yourself on the back for them, and you can't look down your nose at anybody else who may not seem to have what you have. Those were gifts. You did not earn them. So you cannot give yourself credit for that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've been graced with these blessings, you should be appreciative and kind to anybody else. And so we've just always really been big on that. And again, I'm seeing the fruits of it. She's a generous girl to a fault almost. She reaches out, and like I said, you pay now or you pay later. And in our case, we sowed early and continuously and continue to do so. And we're also reaping now because we've been planning, you know, not just in her. You know, often said, I got to be good to guys, because if I don't, who's my daughter going to marry?
So how can people get in touch with you and utilize some of your service, Ms. Benton?
Well, you can find me online. You can email me at DebórahMBenton@gmail.com. My name is spelled D as in David, E-B as in Betty, O-R-A-H, M as in Marie, Benton @gmail.com. Or let's see, that's actually the best way to. And I do respond to emails. So if somebody emails me, and of course you can hit me up on Facebook or Twitter. Facebook, I'm Debórah Benton. Twitter, I'm the Debórah Show. But yeah, hit me up social media wise or an email, and I will definitely respond.
Real quick, what events do you guys have coming up? Real quick.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We have coming up, it'll be May the 21st of 2016, will be the Lindsay Renee Dance Theater concert, and it's going to be at Powers Auditorium.
Oh, wonderful.
We're doing a big event there. So we're looking for dancers.
Oh, okay.
We're definitely looking for dancers. We're also looking for volunteers. And I'll tell you what, if somebody's interested in volunteering, they won't just be giving something. They'll be learning a lot, and they'll be networking. And as you know, when we do something, we open it up for everybody, and we share the benefits with everybody.
Yeah.
We're looking for dancers. We're looking for volunteers. And we're also looking for parents to volunteer, and we're looking for sponsors.
Okay. So great. I know I'll probably be involved with a lot of that. First of all, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, Debórah.
My pleasure.
I want to thank you for representing the females. Everybody listening out there, please respect this Independence Day and respect the women who made it happen. There's a lot of heritage for women who do not only use public relations to bring the forefront of life that we have now, but a lot of, like you said, women have raised men to be what they are today. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Mediator. I want to ask you to tune in next week, as we will have my friend Mr. Budak will come on. He will talk about his life in the nonprofit world. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the Mediator, everybody. Have an excellent week. Thank you, Debórah, for coming on. Have an excellent week, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
To to News Talk 790 WPIC, Sharon Hermitage, a Cumulus station sponsored by the Ridgewood at Shenango Valley, a premier senior living residence.